in Palermo, the Zen stand is one of the most beautiful places ever, well described by many travelers since antiquity, since the 13th century, when Alfred Idrisi, the great geographer, Arab geographer that was traveling in Italy, was describing this that is called la conca d'oro, the golden shell, because it's really like a shell. Now this is from the top of Monreale down to this valley that ends up in the ocean there, in the Mediterranean. And in between, as you can see, there is this monster slab that is made of this building that really looks like a scene in the jail. And this is what it is. By the way, this is something that has been finished in 1992, so it's not that old, but it is already in a horrible shape. You can see also what is happening. You see the skeleton of a motorbike there that has been stolen and abandoned there. You can see how the road is really cutting off the district from the rest of the city. And you can see also the disease of this building with the plaster that is falling down, but also being covered with a plaster that is not breathing. The apartment has plenty of moss. And when you have moss on the wall, you can have asthma. You can have a lot of problems that cannot be ignored. So keeping alive a building that is causing disease, which are health disease and social disease, is a crime. I call this district criminogenic because they are really generating crimes. This is the school that looks like a bunker. Sorry, the church. Even the school looks like a bunker, isolated instead of being part of that. This is the other school. And the funniest, if I can use this word, thing of these architects that designed this district where it was a social, the classless society, it was also the idea of not having any religious presence there. I'm not going to read this long quotation that I gave to PDF to Professor Sina, so she will share with you. But the crazy thing is that a professor of the School of Architecture of Palermo who wrote this assessment, he said that the great success of having a district without any religious presence is given by the illegal construction of all these little shrines in every block made by the inhabitants. So what is the success? The success is that they were forced to make illegally this little shrine instead of doing something that probably wouldn't give them a kind of identity, a kind of sense of belonging. But now, watching the history of Palermo, Palermo was considered by Idrisi, this geographer, Arab geographer, traveling when the governing Sicily was the one of the Christian Norman. But in those days, the problems of among religion were not as strong like in the last century and a half. He was recognizing Palermo as the most beautiful place ever. And the texture of Palermo, the urban fabric of Palermo, as you can see, is very winding because Palermo is, there is this part here, which is the southern, is on the top of the hill, is the place where it was the castle of the ancient Arabs. It is called Cassaro, that is Al-Qasr, is the Arab word that later on became Cassaro and Castello. And there is one connection that goes down to the fort. The city Palermo is coming from Panormus, that in Greek means old port, because it was totally surrounded by a port. Everything that the city was concentrated only here, and here it was a castle. And it was flanked by two rivers that were giving even more protection. The river was dry, and then it became a street. So the winding street is following the trajectory of this river. Except for the straight axis of Cassaro here, the city is extremely winding and is still extremely winding. Nevertheless, in the beginning, 1600, the Spanish decided to in 1600, the Spanish built this new road, via Maqueda, after Maqueda, and for the first time they imposed this grid because that was the vision of those days. Nevertheless, the winding streets are still there. And what is interesting is that the souk, the ancient Arab market of Butcheria, which is on this side, the one of Ballarod that is here, and the one of Cabo that is here, are still there, independently from the age, independently from the culture, independently from anything, independently from the street that is also passing over because they made it flat, the space, so the winding street are passing underneath like in Metropolis. Although the character, the life, the habits have never changed. So this is what you can see, probably is more readable, the winding, beautiful condition typical of the Arab city that is still visible in Palermo. And then I analyzed the pattern language. By the way, the project I'm going to show you is a project that I made they gave me 90 days. I made in 85, working hard day and night, but with a passion. So I had no time. I know very well the place because I go often to Palermo. But for the sake of clarity, I made this documentation only with the picture to document the typical balcony, the typical rails, the typical brackets, the typical portici and courtyards, the typical street market of Palermo, to understand what is the character, which is exactly what the inhabitants were looking for. Palermo has also a more recent district. This is the social housing district Marquesado that was built in 1929, sorry, which is quite a beautiful place. You can see these are the buildings, these are social housing, by the way, like those in Rome. The character is not typically Palermitan, but in many cases it has an incredible dignity. And in the 60s, it was also proposed to tear down this district, and it was a revolution among the inhabitants, and the government they won is still there. But in the 50s, it was also the last attempt to make some project for social housing that was still dignitous, made by the Cardinal Ruffini, who made this district with a new church. The buildings are not that good, as you can see, but in any case, there is a sense of city, there are the portici, there are the shops, there is a mixed income, mixed function. Then they made this other proposal, made by another star architect of the 50s, was also professor in Milan, Salmona, was also brick built of bricks to give a job to his factory, obviously. He designed one building that was repeated everywhere the same, which was completely destroying the sense of belonging. But the worst is that the building was proposed with no balcony in a city of balcony. So as you can see, the inhabitants illegally built their balconies with this iron structure. And the funny thing is that they added also kind of barockish. They built illegally some garden, even here with some little shrine to give them some quality. So what was the site of Palermo of Zen before this intervention? These are the beautiful views made by these painters in the 18th century, Jean de Ruiz, who painted this view, which is roughly exactly the same location of the picture I showed you earlier. This is Zerilli in 1830 that is showing this beautiful land with these trees are flanking the rivers that used to pass through this. The same painter made another view. This is another view from another direction. As you can see, there is this beautiful views of this town that is far on the valley nearby the water, and then there are a little of let's say farmhouses which were characterized, and some of these are still there. This was the Piana dei Colli before the construction of Zen 2 by Gregotti, where these monsters were already built for the Zen 1, but these monsters at least were keeping alive the permeability, the connection with the rest of the context. Now this is completely cut off. even the street that we're passing through after the creation of the ring road are completely locked. It seems like this is a giant jail where they don't want to have any relationship with them. But in reality, making this, what you do is to crystallize a problem, and Zen today is considered the kind of tank where mafia can find their soldiers. So the inhabitants are not all bad. As I said, many of them try to ask me to do something similar to what I did for Corviale. And in Zen we have exactly the same condition, because this is the video game plan existing, which has all these voids. There is only this little presence here of one of these ancient farmhouses of the 18th century, beautiful, to be respected. So even here, proceeding per steps, filling the voids with a new building, is possible to demolish the blocks and move people step by step. It needs a longer process to avoid to have any demolition before having the new district completed. But at the end, you have something that is totally far from what it was. You have this green belt that works as a buffer zone to separate from the noise. And this is also something that is necessary to respect the local standard, because the great challenge today, since it's not possible to change stupid laws we created, is to do something beautiful, something good in the respect of these. And since there is the mandatory minimum distance of 60 meters for building from these houses, it is possible to create this green belt where you can have, we will see, some jogging paths, biking paths, a series of sport activities that are giving a better internal condition to the Borgo. So this is the present Zen, and this is the future one. Here you can see the present circulation. This is the impermeable internal condition of the district. And this is the permeable condition where, thanks to the addition of a series of connections that used to be there with the creation of a roundabout that are allowing the passage, it's possible to have a natural flow through the district with a minimum intervention. So this is the vehicular circulation that has been planned. This is the vehicular and pedestrian circulation. This is the circulation of public transportation to link to the highway, to the port, to the beaches, to all the possible, obviously to the historical center of the city. This is the disposition of all the parking lots. In purple are at the basement of the building, parking for the apartments, and all the possible amount of parking that is mandatory. This is the pedestrian circulation and public spaces for gathering people. Notice how many piazze and piazzette are being created, and also with the addition of the courtyard, permeable, like in Corviale, like in Palermo, it is possible to have a city that is mainly pedestrian. I made also this diagram to show the 10-minute walk city, and also the dimension in terms of time and kilometers of all the main street. This is the main Decumanus, is 7.47 minutes. This is the main Cardo, which is 13 minutes. And this is the other Cardo where I propose, according to the request of people, to have the fourth street market, let's say the fourth souk of Palermo. Notice that every 2 minutes there is a space for gathering people, piazzette. With this circle it's possible to have an idea of the dimension, which is something very important to create a rhythm in the walk. When I make the analysis of the city of Rome with my students, we make an exercise. The first week we will see tomorrow, I think, the way the urban sequences are working. But it's interesting to understand that the issue of the fourth dimension in the way we are designing the building. And the more things are happening when you walk, the less stressful is the walk. You can walk for hours without getting tired, but when we walk in a city, even the nice buildings of the 19th century, but you have this boring rectilinear axis, after 15 minutes my students say, okay, it's always the same. Anyway, So the present land consumption of the Zen is almost 100 hectares. Obviously, cannot be changed that much because it is contained within the ring road. But in any case, we can make an evaluation according to the minimum standard of the amount of green that is mandatory to be created according to the Italian standard, and while the minimum standard says that we need to have 190 square meters of green, this proposal is proposing 540,000 square meters of green. Notice also that the number of inhabitants, differently from the present one, which are 16,000, in my project is 21,125. Even the evaluation of the minimum standard for parking here shows that while for public parking I have to produce 52, almost 53,000, I propose almost 72,000 square meters, while for private parking it is necessary to propose only 5,000 and something. There are 103 potential square meters of parking. The city must be designed for every category of human being, and in this case you can see in yellow the spaces where I propose spaces for kids to play, so playground or sport activities for kids, while in brown are the spaces for the elder, because the elder are always forgotten. But in Palermo, because of the climate, they like to spend time. Sometimes you can see people playing cards in the middle of the street because they would like to have these spaces. So if it's possible to have spaces for the elder, especially if these spaces for the elders are nearby the playground for children, parents can take care about the kids that are playing in the playground. And this is a spontaneous surveillance that is fundamentally important in places like this. I made also the minimum, I exceeded also the minimum requests for schools, which in this case are covering from the preschool to the high school. I made also the sport areas. One of the requests, I made this project also having chatting, let's say, with the inhabitants. We use the TV 2000, which is the TV channel of the Vatican, to organize a series of meetings online with the local people. We also use the social media to allow those that were afraid to be, talking in public because of mafia. During this conversation, it was clear that all the parents and also the parish priest and the director of the school were asking me to increase as much as possible sport, because sport is the stronger defense to keep kids away from the tentacle of the mafia, because of the sports is really popular everywhere. So I brought all the possible sport activities, also because this is not far from the stadium where Palermo soccer team plays, and is also close by to the rugby field, and also in the lower part there is also the former velodrome for biking race. So I added in the southern part the one large sport complex, in the northern part another large sport complex, and I designed all the buildings of this dimensioned according to the minimum dimension suggested by the CONI, in order to understand what is to be made for having an Olympionic swimming pool, for instance, or for any kind of sport which are listed in the tablet there. And I made the same for the Northern Sporting Center. I added a mini soccer, football, thank goodness you are not using the American word, which I hate. And so tennis, paddle, any kind of sport is satisfied here. And as you can see, even into the courtyard of the schools, there are other football field to play. This is the diagram that, like in Corviale, is showing the location of all the shops and the workshop. Red are shops, black are workshop in the secondary streets. This is the shape of the street market of the 4th Street Market. And these are the green spaces. These are all the public buildings. Remember, I was talking about the res publica and res privata economica, and so the same diagram with the white plan where I highlighted in red only the public building is showing the res publica, and then I leave white those buildings and I could coloring in red only the residential building. I have the res privata, and then I have the overlapping that makes the città, the civitas. I made an evaluation also of the mega blocks, as you can see watching from above, thanks to the covered passages. You can see how compact looks the district, even if there are covered passages that are overpassing the streets or leading to the courtyard. And with these colors, I dimensioned the cubic meter of the buildings to be demolished. The color is referring to the height of the building in order to have a proper evaluation. So there are 2 millions, almost 3 millions of cubic meter to be demolished. And I made the evaluation of the cubic meter to be built. Even in this case, the color is showing the height of the building to understand how much does it cost. These are diagrams that are showing the typical size of the streets according to their function, if it's totally pedestrian, semi-pedestrian, vehicular, or also vehicular where public transportation could pass through. And I made the evaluation of the demolition cost, obviously being bigger building, even if the cost in Palermo are lower than in Rome. We have 44 millions of euro of cost of demolition. The cost of construction are much lower for luxury dwellings in Palermo, almost half of those in Rome. And I made the evaluation is 647 millions for the construction, so it's an investment of 692 millions of euros. But then I made all the calculation to understand how to recover step by step the money, so I don't want to take much of your time, but obviously there are spaces that not necessarily must be built by the state, which could be sold to private investors, or the place where it's possible to make a clinical building, and the 2 sport complexes could be sold out. It's possible to recover money from the market of this. But step by step, even in this case, selling the shops, the workshop, it's possible to recover money. As you can see, the inhabitants are 5,125 more than the existing one. So it's possible to increase the mixed income, but it's also possible to recover cost of construction, because the cost of social housing can be zero by the market of new houses and new shops for sale. And step by step, I'm going to have a profit of 194 millions of euro instead of having public costs, money that could be involved for the regeneration of other districts. Moreover, since many of these houses are social housing where the monthly cost of the fee is 300 euros, it's possible to recover every year 8,640,000 per year. This is the present beautiful view from the church of Palermo, which is also wrongly oriented. So I made a proposal with the church on the other side. You can see the hill is still there, but the church is speaking the language of Palermo. The buildings are speaking the language of Palermo, with this typical balcony and rail, with the typical presence of this massive Benjamin tree to shade the head of the kids playing on the bottom. And this is a view of the market piazza, and this is a view from above of the market piazza with the market that is continuing on that street. By the way, the title with this little puttini, it's a quotation of the work of one of the greatest sculptor, almost unknown abroad, that is from Palermo, Giacomo Cotta, who made all these beautiful puttini in the oratory, the small churches of Palermo. And I think since this is a district that is going to be called no longer Zen, but San Filippo Neri, because the church is dedicated to San Filippo Neri, and San Filippo Neri was the priest that spent all his life to take care about the kids, especially abandoned kids. I thought that the presence of this puttini was a good quotation to this fantastic person. Thank you. think we can turn on the light.
So much of input. I'm sure some questions must have come to your mind.
Don't be shy.
Although just in awe of what is being doing. But still, that scale comes with his, yes.
So you have an extensive collection of data for the reconstruction.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
So you collected an extensive amount of data for all the reconstruction and social housing project. So what was your manner of collecting all this data? How did you collect all the data?
Okay, the data for the cost of construction, the data are available every year. Every association of the architect, which means not region by region, but main city by main city, is making a special document that is giving the average cost of construction of the previous year in that zone for different category of buildings. And so since this is obviously is an average cost, it must be considered the gross cost of construction, which are those I showed, and are very close to reality at the end also, because these are the numbers that are used when there is some contest to build something. It's unfortunately today the role of the architect is very horribly reduced to a bureaucrat, and the competition are no longer made for architects but are made for firms that are going to build and are going to cover also the cost of construction or the cost of the architects, the technician. And these data are also giving the possibility to make this competition with the reductions, which means that there is always some profit. So the data are very credible. While for the cost, for the profit, for the income, city by city, and inside the main city, also district by district, there is available online the so-called Borsino Immobiliare, which is giving the data of the cost of apartments, cost of offices, cost of shops, cost of workshops, cost of whatever, from a minimum to a maximum value according to the building is existing, is in a good shape, is in a bad shape, is an average state, shape, is a brand new building. So when you have these, we call Forbish and Caesar, you know what is the minimum, what is the maximum. You can see, okay, the average cost on the real estate is 5,000 euro per square meter. In my project, since I have, and one of the reasons why I was accused not only to be fascist but also to be communist, is because I'm always trying to give justice to the less lucky people. So I try to consider some cost that is affordable. So the value I took is never the highest, it's always in between, in order to have this possible return, which is credible, must be credible. And it's more than credible, because if I know that one apartment in San Saba today is 11,000 euro per square meter, and is immediately sold out. If I say I can sell for 5,000, I'm sure that that is going to be a business in any case. While for the cost of demolition, that is more complicated, but thank goodness we have the data of the demolition cost of an immense building in Naples that was actually 3 have been demolished, which was like a Corviale. It was demolished because a lot of crimes happened, and the quality of the reinforced concrete was so bad that it was necessary to demolish. So we know the very bottom line cost of construction of that. In Italy, but I think everywhere, there is the ISTAT, which is the National Institute for Estimations, which allow us to understand make some, how say, to make a reevaluation. It's a reevaluation, right? So if I know the cost in 1990, I know that between 1990 and 2025, the percentage of reevaluation is something. So even if a data is old, I can readapt to nowadays, considering what was the growth. And it's absolutely precise data because it's made by a commission that is making very, very deep studies. Saying that, I would like to underline that I never invented anything in this project in the sense that I'm not the guru that has the verb, but this project has been done simply to show what is possible to be done if we simply, instead of reinventing the wheel, we open a drawer and we take a series of laws, tools, and policies that were in use in Italy until the fascist time when it was decided to stop. One of these, just to quote one, was saying since the problem is not only the low-income people, but is also the employed, it's necessary to give a house to all these new inhabitants. It's necessary to make a measure that is allowing them to purchase their house because everybody has the right to buy a house. So the state, the banks, when the banks were still doing something philanthropic, but more the state than them, the law was saying that I can take the money from the bank, but while I'm returning monthly the money to the bank, the very money I receive, the interest of the mortgage are paid by the state, which in some way was giving some regulation to the bankers not to rise up too much their interest, and in any case to warranty to the banks to have the money back. Obviously, if someone was not paying, the house was to be confiscated like it is happening today. But the difference is when the state does this, does what the ancient Roman emperor was doing with the documentazione I mentioned. And so I made this evaluation according to these costs in Rome and to the costs in Palermo. But everywhere I go, I apply the same rules because, you know, independently from the value of the cost of life, place by place, the logic is always the same, and I think it's possible to be done everywhere. I don't know if it was clear enough.
So I want to include a lot of like courtyard type of housing. So what is your logic behind that?
The logic of the courtyard, as I said, is based on those of the courtyard I shown of the existing districts. When they built these districts in Rome, they started building this district because it was made a very interesting sociological study, which is available online. If you go on the website academia.edu, you can find an essay of mine that is talking about the great story of the Testaccio district in Rome, where the violence was horrible, worse than the social banlieue, the French banlieue. And this sociologist, proto-sociologist, Domenico Rano, whose picture was in all the police station as a dangerous anarchist, simply because he was trying to understand what was going wrong with the poor people. He made this fantastic study and he created a committee for the moral and economic improvement of Testaccio. And this committee was collecting together people from many kind of social classes, religious beliefs, and etc., etc. And they were fighting for many other things, but when they were dealing with the district, they were thinking like one. And they identified all the problems of these houses, which were based on the enclosed block, which was the way that was theorized by the Cardinal who made the speculation in Rome. So the apartments with a beautiful facade outside were hiding monster internal condition, with overcrowded condition, with a lot of illness. So in this committee we're working together, where the architect was the very last one involved, were sociologists, economists, doctors. This is the moment when the etiology has been developed, and the etiology is a special branch of medicine that is studying direct relationship between the disease or epidemics and the living overcrowded condition. So many different things brought to the invention of a new type of building, which is the Casa Emilia, with the courtyard, which was made on purpose to have the cross ventilation. But the layout of the house was organized in a manner to warranty the security of kids. Because on those days, the women were living mainly at home, so they display all the kitchen on the courtyard in order to watch from the window the kids playing in the courtyard. And every courtyard was designed with a playground inside. this was also something that was necessary because, as they were saying, the architect of those days were saying, since the urbanists forgot the spaces for gathering people together, we put these spaces inside the blocks. So the courtyard is not conceived as you have seen in the picture. Some courtyard looks very beautiful, like a piazza, because they said our facade are not secondary spaces, but are the continuation of the public space within the public, within the private world. And my courtyard, not invented by me, but it's a simple continuation of what used to be possible to be done in those days in order to create a city that is satisfying the needs of everybody, starting from the kids.
I had a question pertaining to the previous project that you showed, which was titled, I guess, Round Rise rather than I Rise.
Yes,
So
it was it was a name. Well, actually, I invented this name ground scraper because obviously skyscraper.
Right.
But when you have a 1 kilometer, it's really one
Yeah, so I
horrible
had a peculiar thing to ask about because there was no detrimental factor that you can't build taller at that point of time. I don't believe that, it was within the vicinity of a aerodrome or something wherein the height restrictions were applicable. But then, probably since you were talking about how long it took, 7.5 years to build for 122 families, wouldn't it would have been economical and viable to probably build taller rather than
absolutely
horizontally?
Absolutely.
But then the redevelopment, I was wondering because we didn't see
No,
any elevations.
I know
So I
because
was
that
just
is
wondering.
no, because this is obviously some absolutely logical questions and a question that is coming out often and is based on many lies that unfortunately are presented. Because first of all, when you work with a high rise, you are not saving the surfaces, because when you have a skyscraper and you collect 5,000 people within a building, you need to have an immense surface around of the road and parking.
Yeah,
and then you are also addicted on air conditioning, and these buildings are sometimes causing horrible problems. I don't know if you've seen these buildings on fire a few days ago, and it's not the first case. It's something, and the technique, the technology, the material for building this building is completely unsustainable. Something I had not time to show, but if we will have time, I can bring my computer very quickly to show real data of unknown things that are happening. When I made this documentation, I discovered, as I said, not only the bottom line cost of construction, but also the time needed for the construction.
True.
And the first intervention in San Saba, which is a marvelous, I quoted this because in San Saba, it's the case of this recent auction where the apartment were, one apartment were on the market for 11.11 thousand euro per square meter. I found the real documentation in the archive that shows that the construction started in October 1908, and in April 1909, all the apartments were inhabited, 6 months, never restored more than 100 years. So here, these are real data. There is the lot number 24 in Garbatella that was built as a demonstrative district because it was organized in Rome, the international meeting of Institute for Social Housing. And it was necessary to demonstrate a new type of construction, a new quick type of construction with the villino type. And it was given 1 month for the design and 4 months for the construction. These buildings are still there, never restored, in a fantastic shape. This means that all the lies we heard about the high-rise or problem of building a monster building to host the the refugee, etc., are just lies simply to justify more speculative intervention. Try to imagine if, like what happened in Testaccio, because among the other things I have to say is that when it was in 1910, it was necessary to organize the exhibition to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the unification of Italy. It was recognized as the shame of a lot of illegal huts, villages along the river embankment, which was not a good way to present Rome to visitors. So they proposed to build new apartment blocks in Testaccio for more than roughly 6,000 of inhabitants. And that's the reason why it was this research made by Orano that brought to the creation of the committee. And I find they decided not to accept the offer by a private investor who offered a couple of millions of lira those days to build this district. Because they said, that, like what is happening with the charity, when you are making people addicted on charity, you are keeping them as a parasite. While people were rebelling on the idea of remaining a parasite, which was the system used by the clergy and by the nobility. I give you something and then you are happy. But at the end, this is not a way to have a social revenge. So those people said, we don't want to have the charity. We want to have a future. So since all the inhabitants at the end were employed in the construction of new buildings around Rome, they created a series of cooperative of workers, the masons, the carpenter, the blacksmith, etc. And they created some institution within the municipality that was coordinating these cooperative of workers, which were builders of the houses where they were going to live. And this was super successful, and it was in use until the fascist time, when at a certain point, obviously in a regime like that, you are much more interested in supporting those that are supporting you, rather than think about the inhabitants of the city. And so that was, the truth is that the land consumption of Terbatella, of Città Giardinoniene, of all these districts, and the quality of houses is much, much better than the monster ground scraper or any kind of a skyscraper that is going to be a problem for the planet instead of being a way to change the quality of the planet.
So wrong town planning created a disaster.
Town planning created disaster.
Wrong.
Yeah. Wrong, yes, of course.
गलत प्लानिंग अगर किया जाए ना, गलत प्लानिंग किया जाए तो क्या वो एक डिजास्टर क्रिएट किया जा सकता है? अगर ऐसा बहुत सारे ऐसे सभ्यताएं हैं जो खत्म हो गए, क्या इसके पीछे रॉन्ग प्लानिंग था? जैसे मोहनजोदड़ो.
So, he wants to know if some civilizations have died off. Can there be a reason that because of wrong planning, it contributed to their getting
Thank you for the question. You invite me to talk about, I think, the best cartoon, Disney cartoon ever. I'm not kidding. Have you ever seen Wall-E? The story of Wall-E is exactly the question you are asking about, because this is something that is showing precisely the American society. Because you have these humans that have polluted so much the planet that they are forced to run away and live on the spaceship, and they left these mini robots on the planet to check if the life is back. And when the life is back with the leaves, he has to inform the spaceship, you can come back. But then the computer is trying to block the information, which is what is going to happen with AI, but that's another story. And what is interesting is that these humans that are living on the spaceship are all obese, and they are living on these floating chairs. And the first thing to do before coming back to the planet is to open a book, and they don't know what is a book. And this book is a manual that is teaching them that they have the legs, and they have to learn how to use the legs to move. Which means that, yes, human being is the responsible of the death of the planet. He's the worst dangerous animal for the planet. we claim to be the most intelligent, but probably we are not. And until we are in time to realize the mistake and recognize our mistakes, we have to change. And the message was delivered very well in 2005. Another book I strongly suggest you to read is written by James Howard Kustler, and it's called The Long Emergency. And the subtitle is How to Survive with the end of the low-cost era, low-cost oil era. Because even unfortunately the alternative energies, unfortunately, are depending on that. In 2035, so no longer now, is in this book, and no one scientist dismantled this theory yet because they're based on real data. It is the moment when the cost to extract 1 barrel of oil will be higher than the cost of 1 barrel of oil. And this means that he planned in 2005, he wrote about what was going to happen if we were not understanding that the long emergency started. And he was depicting some image of the new Middle Ages with a lot of wars that were going to affect the places where we have these resources, and it was a war to take these resources. Nobody listened at that. But watching at what is happening in the Middle East, in Venezuela, in Ukraine, I can't show that I don't know, because I knew. Because in 2005, this book was depicting precisely what later on happened. It's time to be able to be honest and humble enough to say, okay, it was an attempt, we made a mistake. Let's go and restart when, not from the Renaissance, from the moment when we fell asleep.
Very well put.
I think this course for all of you is very, very relevant. Most of you, I would say 95% of you are already in the formative period of your time career. So I suppose you can be his voice to take it further, because very well researched, and you are striking at the root of all causes. Because today, in today's time, development goes very at 180 degrees. Professor is talking. So when in whichever field you're working, we have a range of students from different states. Wherever you are working, the philosophy that you put ahead, the knowledge that you put ahead, have a very valid. We really want to better. If we really want a better life for the future generations, then this is the way that we need to progress. So thank you, Professor. Guides their minds the right way. They are the future.
Future is in your hands.
And I'm so thankful for getting such a good direction.
We have never thought the
Yes.
way you have approached regeneration. The actual regeneration was, we could really relate, okay, what actually regeneration is. It is vibrant and it belongs to, and it's really amazing. And statistics, that was another like a bull. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Grazie.
It's grazie. Yes.
Thank you.
So it's already 12, I understand? 12. Okay. So we break for the lunch and we get back at 1:30. क्या time है? Look at the schedule.